welcome to Q&A with S&A. I am Andrea.
And I'm Shane.
And today we have a really special guest with us, Nadia Cole, who Nadia is a client of ours, but she also is an amazing landscape designer. We've seen her work before, and I'm going to let her do a little intro of herself so that I don't make any mistakes. Nadia, over to you.
I run a business called Platylobium Landscape Design. We are predominantly a native, Indigenous, sustainable landscape design company based in Melbourne, but work sort of throughout New South Wales and South Australia at the moment. We're a team of 4 women.
Wow.
Working out of my house in Doncaster East. But yeah, we're a good little tight bunch. It's a fun team.
Yeah.
And how long you been running the business for?
Since my daughter was 6 months old, so she's nearly 9, but that was sort of a part-time thing.
Yeah.
It sort of got more serious over the last 3 years. Definitely more serious.
Yeah. How do you go about, because you work from home?
Yep.
How do you manage that? Do the team come to you if you need to? Like, do you spread out over the boardroom table?
It's a family home. We're working out of one of the rooms. They're like family, which is really good. My daughter goes and plays with them and does their hair, and but it's a very tight little network, and I suppose that's a credit to the team. But I think, are those type of people that really love that environment. So yeah, it's a very cozy little workplace, but it works really well.
Yeah.
And it's a very busy time for you at the moment too, because there's something coming up. Can you elaborate more on that for us?
It's the Melbourne International Flower and Garden Show that we start the build next Sunday or start the layout, and then I think it's the 20th of March that's open to the public.
Yeah.
And it's 5 days of I think 100 to 200,000 people, depending on how many people come through. And we've got a big show garden this year, which is very exciting.
And it's your second year?
It is our second year. Last year we did a garden called Consciousness, which won a Silver Gilt Medal, which was a bit of a shock to the system. We're feeling a bit better because we've got one under our belt for the second time around. But yeah, last year was fabulous. We got a really good rep. I've always wanted to put forward a garden that shows the contemporary use of native plants in a sustainable landscape. So we were lucky to have on board Sanctum Homes to demonstrate sort of the back of a passive house, as well as some sustainable landscape features. We've got the same team coming forward this year with an extra exciting component being Spaces in Places, who have built a passive type sustainable tiny house that will be part of the feature of this show garden. Wow. So it's Spaces in Places, Platylobium Landscape Design as the designer. We've got Atlas Concrete and Landscapes as the landscaper, Sanctum Homes, and Angus Stewart, which we're really excited about as well. So he's a ex-Gardening Australia presenter.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
And the award you got last year for a first time display.
It's a bit of a rare one. We were sitting in the breakfast and they announced the golds and best in show, and they don't say anything else at the breakfast. And I was walking out with the director of the event, and he said, "You'll be very happy." So you had to walk all the way down to the stand to see what was on there. And I didn't, to get a Silver Gilt is sort of not done first time round. So we were pretty stoked.
Yeah. And for the people listening, because we're getting this podcast out before your show garden is on for this year, whereabouts is the show?
We're right. It's at the Carlton Gardens. Yep. So,
and people will probably notice that they put a big fence up around the gardens for the time, don't they?
So midnight, 12 o'clock next Sunday night, it all gets locked down and security go up, and we've got 9 days to build a full garden. So our garden's 29 metres long by 20 metres wide. So that's almost like a residential block. So Sunday morning, the tiny house will go in.
Yeah.
And then everything's very, very highly scheduled because we're under the pump.
Yeah.
The interesting thing with the build is you're not allowed to put a single hole or peg into the ground. So the grass has to be protected because they're heritage gardens, obviously. There's a whole lot of, I suppose, thought and process and challenge around putting a whole garden together.
Yeah.
Let alone structural features where we can't put a hole in the ground. So, yeah.
So I know that you haven't done this, but what do you do if you're going to put like a pond or a pool? Like, because some of the gardens have got pools in them and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, you've got a pool.
So
Wow.
we've got designer plunge pools who have sponsored us with a beautiful, plunge pool, not a hot tub, but it's a plunge pool. Yep. So that what we have to do is, I suppose, line the whole site with a geotech fabric to protect the grass. The tiny house will be brought in on track mat and set and left. And then we have to use stuff like a yellow tongue plyboard to get that pool level. But we've got a surveyor coming in and getting everything in the right space. So there's a whole lot that has to go in underneath the ground.
So it's basically somebody's an entire
landscape.
Building site that you've got to...
Yep. And then so the level or the fall on the site, which is why we chose that site, is almost a 2 metre fall from top to bottom. Yeah. So the tiny house will go at the top, and then we've got a boardwalk which extends the whole length, which is made out of Aussie hardwood, reclaimed Aussie hardwood, which has come off one of Sanctum Home's house demos in Warrandyte. So that's pretty cool. All that timber's being repurposed. Yep. So we'll get all those levels right, and then the subfloor's built and the plunge pool's put in, and then everything's built off all of that. So it's a challenging one. We've bitten off a lot more than last year. Yeah.
Well, you've got a big shoes to fill from what you did last year. So.
I know. Everybody, we don't want to say is being competitive, but I think there is a little bit of that happening.
Yeah.
Apart from, I suppose, demonstrating to people the feel and the theme behind the garden, which is really important to all of the people involved, is, people are looking for that retreat and that reprieve from busy life, and being able to go off and spend some downtime and really look after mental health. And the tiny house is fully self-contained, high-end. Wow. We'll actually be sleeping in there.
Okay.
Hopefully. Having that opportunity, that's something we're working through at the moment. But being able to introduce people or encourage people that this is a landscape you can have in your garden, but also it's all inspired for me from the Cradle Mountain hike. Yeah. Just that vegetation community and some of the special Tassie plants that are around. So
the tiny home, I suppose, is probably really appropriate at the moment because of the government allowing people to build granny flats in the backyard again. Like everyone grew up with a granny flat in the backyard and then they were taken away and now they've come back. And so I guess, putting a tiny house in a beautiful landscape, because I know my grandparents had a granny flat in the backyard and it was pretty dodgy. Like it's an old fibro, you were lucky if it had a toilet or whatever. Yep. These are
so lovely. And Spaces in Places are a team of 4. They're 3 mates that have been friends forever, and then Amy is one of their partners. She's got a media background. They've built a beautiful product. And they've gone and stayed in a whole lot of tiny houses, and I suppose what they're trying to differentiate themselves from the market is the windows don't fog up. It's got a really high-end fit out. It's warm and it's cozy and it's self-sustainable, and it's, it can be something that you can live off the grid and have a lovely little holiday. So this is their first one, which is really exciting. That's being built for the show. And then, their plan is to build 4 and move them on into renting.
And the fact that you can put them in a beautiful landscape, like what you're creating. So it's not just a shed in the backyard. No. It's an integrated part of
it. Yeah. So that whole experience of being able to sit around the fire pit, which we've got with some rammed earth walls, and then hop in the plunge pool, and apart from all the beautiful plants, which is probably what I'm most excited about.
So on the plants, Native gardens, it's a big thing because obviously drought, we're a dry landscape and all of that. And native gardens aren't something that is typical, particularly, I mean, we're filming this podcast in Hawthorne East, so it's a very traditional British type garden, lots of box hedges and lots of roses and camellias and stuff like that. We have a native garden balcony because we deliberately chose to have native plants in our balcony. They are hard though. I'm not used to them. I don't think Shane grew up with a lot of natives in the garden either, and they're a bit more hard to look after. Not that they're harder than others, but I thought putting native plants in our garden would have been like, they can look after themselves.
Yeah, it's a misconception. I think lots of people say, I want a no maintenance garden, and I'm like, it doesn't happen. Yeah. I mean, there's ways that you can pick plants that are fitted to the soil type and the climatic conditions. I suppose that's sort of what we're trying to demonstrate with this garden. We're also trying to showcase that native plants can look really sexy, like this is sort of, I suppose it's something I've been challenged with this plant design that I'm still drawing all over trace paper on my dining room table at the moment, is trying to make these plants look like an organised garden but pull in that Tassie high country feel, as well as stuff that is actually achievable for residents to replicate and be excited about a few of the plants that are coming in, which is really exciting because we have got 2 new release plants that haven't sort of hit the market properly yet. So there's a black coria, which is called Coria chocolate, which is, it's got black leaves and it's absolutely stunning. And then a grevillea called Grevillea mellow yellow, as well as some Tassie eucalypts that can be used in small gardens like in Hawthorne and Camberwell, that allow to have some nectar plants, and rather than having all your exotics up, these are smaller scale trees. So it's trying to encourage people inner suburbs that we can still have that available.
And with the flower garden show last year, you were the only native.
We were last year. This year we're not, which is really cool. There's some of our very close competitors, but wonderful craftsmen in the industry that their show gardens are going to be absolutely stunning. Which is good.
You're seeing that as a trend now?
I think it's I'm stoked that there's more of that this year. There's a couple of internationals as well, which will bring some interesting design, but not using the native, obviously. It's good. It's such a good place to go and get inspired, I think. But it's great to see some more native plants coming through this year.
Do you have trouble convincing people when you go and sit at their dining tables and give them a plan? Do you have trouble with convincing them to use natives?
No, most of them are coming to us for that reason. We have had a couple that have sort of turned around and said, they want to bring more exotics in, which is totally fine. We will advise on whether we think things are weedy, I suppose from an environmental perspective, not putting stuff in that's going to spread or move into the creekland or any surrounding parklands, and stuff that's going to survive better. So, most of them are coming to us because of what we do, which is good.
What are the sorts of plants that you plant all the time? Like the ones that are the key. Like if you were to say to somebody, if you've got a garden bed out the front, which plants would you recommend that they?
There's a palette that we use. I think one that we're really bringing in. Obviously, there's a whole lot of Indigenous stuff that's really good, but trying to get some pretty colour in. And kangaroo paws are a big one that people are loving at the moment, and the scavola and yellow flowering daisies. We try and get a platylobium into people's landscape as well, which is a little pea-flowered Indigenous plant, which is what the business is named after. But there's lots. It's a mix, but people, the girls are really into matching colours and getting some beautiful palettes in for people, trying to encourage that, real floral display. And also a push for cut flower gardens.
Yeah.
Which lots of people are coming to us for now as well. So they can actually go and pick some native flowers and put them in a vase on the table.
Yeah, because I think that's probably what generally people think native gardens are. There's not a lot of beautiful flowers or a lot of colour. It's kind of, if I'm looking at the bush in, a bushwalk, it's typically all brown and grey and stuff. So how do I make colour in my garden?
And I think that is exactly what I tried to challenge last year was having big groups of masses of flowers and making it look more contemporary to try and inspire people that are more traditionally, camellias and roses and that sort of thing, that it still can look really stunning. So my grandparents were in Eltham on 5 acres. I suppose that's where a lot of my passions come from, as well as my auntie. And they both had 5 acres of native plants. We're both members of the Native Plant Society, but theirs was that 1960s to 1980s traditional botanic garden kind of feel of let's put everything in and get all the pretty flowering plants in. And it sort of, I suppose, gives that conception of looking messy and not maintained, and people come thinking, oh, we don't really want to see that. So we're trying to sort of switch that and put more of that contemporary feel on it. But not everybody wants that. But
and the supply of native plants they're readily available?
Yeah. And that's something that's been amazing for us over the last 12 months. Angus Stewart, who is sort of the native plant guru in the industry, who anybody who designs a native plant garden will go to his website. He's got a great, I suppose, online system where you can filter through and it gives you a list of plants. He's on Gardening Australia for years and he's got a whole lot of plants that he's been breeding. He rocked up on the show garden stand the last night just before we were closing, and I totally fangirled him, ran up and hugged him, and he has just been amazing for trying to work with the native plant industry to make things more available. He's so passionate and so helpful. So he's been able to open our network up into reaching plants that are readily available and put us in contact with suppliers. But he's also down in Tasmania breeding and doing all of his things and coming up with some fabulous options for native plant suppliers. So, it's been a really good 12 months working with him, and we're absolutely grateful for his input on this garden show. Yeah.
So when do you get time to have a break? Because you've got all this coming up with the show, and then after that, I'm assuming there's going to be lots of inquiries that
I hope
come
so.
of it.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I'm locked and loaded, I suppose. It's a really exciting time. It's been quite challenging over the last 12 months with ebbs and flows in the industry, especially with, I suppose, the financial market and people spending and not spending and tightening up. So I think back at the start of the year was a little bit anxious about this garden show because it takes a lot out of the business. But also I think we're all in a very good position because what an opportunity to promote the business and be able to be exposed through a whole lot of media opportunities like this and all the other ones that come along with being part of that. So I'd love to book a holiday, but not quite yet. We need to get through the next bit.
And you talked about the challenges over the last little while. So obviously the industry you're in, it's linked to the construction industry, and the construction industry particularly has been going through a very difficult time over the last 12 months or so. How has that impacted you?
I think from a price point perspective, we're involved in a lot of developments that are new house builds. So something that's happening is the houses are getting built, but prices are going up for the residents. So we've been trying to push the early engagement always of working with property owners prior to a house being built. It just smooths out so many transitions and makes the landscaping more cost effective from a planning perspective as well as an installation perspective. But that's all getting put to the back because, they're saying to us, oh, we've had an extra $50,000 put on our plate for the build. So then that landscape design gets cut or the landscape budget gets cut. So we're sort of finding that's been a big impact. And just, I suppose, it's a luxury. It's a luxury expense for some people. So that component of the market's been, I suppose, removed a little bit for a while. We're sort of finding that there is bits and pieces coming back through, but yeah, it's definitely a challenging time. We've been reviewing our processes and packages and trying to look at cost-effective designs that are going to still give our clients an output of what we specialise in without, sort of giving them the full package. So there's those options. We sort of have to be a bit flexible.
And hopefully I think we're starting to see now probably the tail end of the construction woes and things like that, and I think a bit more stability in the economy with interest rates now probably at their peak. Don't quote me on that.
Hope so.
Hope so, yeah, exactly. And now talk that they may start to come down. That might then, and also there's tax cuts coming in July. Might give people a bit of extra money in their pockets where they can then look at these things that they've been putting off.
Exactly.
And start spending on those things again.
Fingers crossed.
But you've got a very supportive team as well.
Oh, they're amazing. We have been through, I suppose, a really hard time over the last 6 months. And my team, who are beautiful women, I will give them all a shout out. We've got Sarah, Victoria and Lucy, and we've also got Karen, who does a bit of part-time work for us. They all rallied together and sort of said, look, we're happy to drop our hours back to help the business through. I don't know where you get that anywhere. I couldn't be more grateful for their support. I've learnt a lot and reflected on the way that I operate as a manager and as a business owner, but also for them. It's been hard, but gosh, they're wonderful.
That's a credit to you as well as them.
It's been a thing that I've always tried to bring into the business, and it's part of operating from the house, and part of operating as that family style business is making it flexible, making it open, making it a family type environment so that we do all support each other and that they feel like they're a part of the business. And I think it does circle back to you. I wouldn't have a business if it wasn't for them. Your staff are
Absolutely.
Are your thing.
They're the backbone, aren't they?
So working from home. How do you switch off? So you've got home that's home for sleeping and lifestyle, and then you've got home for work. Are you good at switching off changing between the two?
I'm not too bad. I could be a lot better. I have, I suppose, I'm a lot better than I was 2 years ago. Let me put it that way. It's there and it's my passion also. So I kind of live and breathe it. It doesn't do me good health-wise either if I throw myself, and also I've got my daughter on my own. So that's, my life is very full. I have every second weekend to myself, which I tend to just collapse and have that weekend to, completely veg out and not do anything.
Are you like the plumber whose pipes are broken? Is your garden beautiful, or would you like to take some time out to make your garden look like your show gardens?
No, I'd love to. There is a lot of plants in my garden from last year's show garden, but we're in a rental, so we don't. But I've got some beautiful pots, and my house is full of indoor plants. So I definitely try and bring it here, but there's only limited time to managing all of that.
Managing your own garden as well as everybody else's.
All of the experimental plants that I want to try go into my parents' garden in Warrandyte.
So so you talked about pots, because there's lots of people who rent. I mean, that's just a normal thing these days. It's how do you, like, if someone is to come to you and say, I'm moving out into my first house, Nadia, and it's just a rental. what are some ideas that you can give them that would be like good to improve their landscape?
To improve their landscape in a small balcony. Yeah. So we do have sort of a secondary type, well, it's not business, but a little spin-off called Platylobium pot styling. So we offer a pot styling service, which is so cost effective for renters, which is putting groups of pots that can be moved on. And this package that we pull together, sorry, it sounds like a bit of a sell.
No, it's okay. That's fine.
We go through and look at the space and work out where we can put pots and put plants into a package that you can come through it and install. So I think having as much green and also bringing in some plants that are going to attract birds and native flora and fauna into greening up those balconies is really important from a mental health perspective, but also from an environmental perspective. It just makes you feel good.
Yeah. And, you know, I think we think essentially that people who are renters are maybe don't stay in the one place for a long time, but a lot of renters actually rent long term.
Absolutely. So, well, we're long term and I know our landlord loves me there because the garden's being done and we've got beautiful pots there and it's all being looked after. And I think, you know, it makes it feel special. It makes it feel like
it's
home.
Still home, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think having even just indoor pot plants is so easy to do.
So do you do the indoor stuff as well?
We do indoor pot styling and we do outdoor pot styling as well as furniture and sort of accessories. So we've just done 2 designs for the channel opposite the Channel 9 buildings in Richmond. There's a new development that's gone in there. They're 4-storey build or apartments. They're gorgeous. So we've pot styled all of those balconies.
Yeah, amazing.
As well as some inside pots. And then we actually do the installation as part of that. So we'll put the pots in and plant them all up. And we've just done another one in Clifton Hill with a beautiful rooftop balcony that's got a view over the city, but we've got some custom made steel planters.
I think I saw those on your social media.
And so she wanted a mix of cut flower, some limes for her gin and tonic and
important.
And some bird attracting plants, which has just made it a really nice space. So it's so cost effective and it's so easy to do. Our package, I think, is about $1,200 to sort of do that design process. Then you get it costed for installation. If we need some muscles, we call on our landscapers to help get some of that stuff up to the top. Because
sometimes you'd be taking like
the
up
one
a lift or
Clifton Hill, like if we can get crane access, it's great. But the one in Clifton Hill didn't, so that was 4 flights of stairs. Which was a good workout for the team. But they love it, and I think that comes back to something that's really important to me as a design business is giving the girls the opportunity to get their hands dirty as well, because you actually learn what it means to put it in or put the plants in and look after them. So we offer that design install for the pots as well as plant layouts for a lot of our landscapes as well, and a maintenance plan so that it's that holistic. Landscape architects tend to, and the industry probably hate me for saying this, but come through with not so much plant-based knowledge. So it's something that we're quite heavy on is the plant styling or plants component, the green component rather than the hard landscape side of things. So I try and give the girls as much experience as we can on that, which is good for the clients.
Where do you get your inspiration from?
That's a good question. I just, it's been in me for a very long time. As I said, and I say it all the time, it comes back from growing up with my grandparents in Eltham and being exposed to all those beautiful native plants. It's just, I did horticulture straight out of school and I just love plants. I know it sounds absolutely ridiculous, but it's just something that I thoroughly have a passion for and enjoy. And it's interesting because you, as a business owner, you sort of end up moving away from a little bit of what your passion is and running the business. And that's a challenge that I find, and it's something that I suppose as you get bigger, you get removed a little bit from being so much involved in the passion side of things. So, that's something that I'm working on.
And where do you want the business to go? Do you want it to stay around the size it is now, or do you want it to get bigger?
Probably slightly bigger. Yeah. I'm very conscious of not growing too quick. I've always had that thought. You want to sort of crawl before you walk and walk before you run. And I think we've still got a few years of consolidating our design principles as well as efficiencies in our business model. I think we could definitely move across Australia and spread our wings that way. Maybe a couple more. I would like to move out of the house.
Yes.
I would like to have a little design studio with a shop front where we sell coffees and offer pot styling. That's my sort of next step. Where we can sort of retail sell that sort of thing, but have just a nice hub to come to, and I think a couple more designers. But I think I don't want to lose what we've got either. By getting too big.
If you were back at school and you were giving advice, thinking about where you were at and where your headspace was at when you decided to go into horticulture, kids coming through that process now, I guess it's probably something that you will only do if you really love it, because nobody at school is talking about going to do something like that. It's not really you go and do an accounting degree, or you go and do an arts degree or something like that.
I don't know if that's a good example.
I know. Well, it's just one of those things. It's not really how do you have those conversations with the up-and-comers in the industry?
It's interesting. I had a call last week from a complete random, I don't know how he got my number, but he was looking at studying and wanted to know what I'd done, and he wanted to sort of model similar to the direction that the business was going. And I said to him, you need to get your hands dirty. That was, I suppose, if you've got a passion for it, the best thing that I did was do work in the field and understand it from the ground up, rather than going straight into studying and just sticking to that. I think there's a really good grounding, dare I say it, of having that experience. I think there's a lack of people in trade at the moment from a construction perspective. And speaking to Matt and a lot of the landscapers, and this is, I suppose, a bit of a diversion from the design perspective, but it's all linked. There isn't as many people coming through trade school. People aren't wanting to work and get their hands dirty, which is having a really big impact on the ability to employ landscapers, which has an impact on our designs being implemented. So I'm not quite sure what's happening there. From a design perspective, I think if I can encourage people to learn their plants and understand plants, and not necessarily going through horticulture, but landscape architects, that's what we need.
Okay. Because if you're like building a garden, how do most people come across what you do? Is it like word of mouth, or are they Googling a specific phrase or something like that to say, because there's landscape design, and then there's,
landscape
architects, and there's, gardeners, what's all the difference?
We're trying to promote ourselves as native plant, or having that native plant specialist field. A lot of our clients come through Instagram.
Okay,
a huge amount. We're sort of through association with Sanctum Homes and the passive house industry. It's a really nice match in with getting referred to people who are building passive houses because they're passionate about their footprint and sustainability, and therefore a garden that sits under our mould comes through that way. I'm still trying to tweak my SEOs to get all of that filtering in that direction, but I think that's where we want to sit, is sort of servicing that range of clients, and I think that's how we come through. But from inspiring people coming through the industry, going up to Karanga Native Nursery, or just learning as much about native plants and from a horticultural perspective, it is something I always feel is valuable.
If you were to give one piece of advice for a person who wanted to plant their front yard, suburban front yard, what sort of, like, what's the 5 plants that you would say to them, look at these 5 and focus on?
Doesn't want to give away too much advice because then they'll go and do it without engaging.
And then
Nadia.
Say, oh, they're really hard to plant, so you have to call Nadia.
Yeah, book a discovery call online and I can give you some tips.
I think that's the right answer.
We have, I mean, there's so many native plants. I suppose, I won't give away any specifics, but one thing that we've done through Burundara City Council has been involved with the Backyard Biodiversity Program, which encourages people to bring native plants into their garden. So I think for the suburban backyards, what would be really good is to have people think about the layering of the vegetation. So thinking about having small prickly plants for small birds, having flowering plants like a chrysocephalum or a brachycomb or some daisies that are going to bring butterflies and insects, not having too many nectar plants that's going to bring too many bully birds in, that's going to scare away all of those little birds. So that's from a habitat perspective, which I think is really valuable. But it's looking at that layering component of vegetation within your garden as well as the aesthetics, because you can still make that look really beautiful. But making sure that we're bringing habitat back into those suburban landscapes because all the little birds are going and, you know, we're losing so much habitat. I think it's so important.
Sorry, with that, so natives means all of Australia, or is it localised natives?
So natives is all of Australia. Indigenous is local to, say, the Camberwell area or the Warrandyte area. Like kangaroo paws that we're using are Western Australian. We've got a really good solid base of Indigenous plants that are almost like staple diet plants that you can use in the outer zones of your garden, and then you can bring all your pretty stuff. There's a whole lot of Western Australia have the most amazing palette of plants. You can start pulling a lot of that stuff in and even putting them in pots because you can manipulate the soil type in those pots and grow stuff that's a little bit more specky than, you know, in a Warrandyte soil or a Camberwell soil. I
think we're pretty lucky where we live. Number one, we've got a lot of natives in our own balcony garden, and we've got a lime tree and a lemon tree for the gin and tonics, exactly the same thing. But we've got a park down the road which is, you know, reasonably well established and lots of people use it. But then the other day we walked down there, and I haven't been down there for a little while, and somebody who back onto the park, their houses back onto the park, have planted this lots of just flowers and stuff. They're not natives, but they're really beautiful and colourful, and it just brought a spot of colour to that part of the garden when, you know, it's a bit dry at the moment, so the grasses are a bit green, a bit brown, and it's not looking so flash at the park at the moment. But this spot of green, there was nothing native about it, but it was just this little green and floral oasis in the middle of nowhere.
And I think you can do that, especially on a lot of the larger properties. Like, you know, looking at a parkland, because you've got to be careful about how much you chew off to maintain. So having that, you know, sort of larger parkland, but then have that little hub close up to the house where you've got your cut flowers and your pretty stuff.
It was super pretty, and it was those dahlias and stuff like that, really beautiful balls of colour. It was just put a smile on our face on our long walk on Sunday morning. But going back to your show garden, because we want to make sure that people go along to see it, because it's going to be pretty special. Melbourne International Flower and Garden Show, you can find all of the details on your Instagram, I'm assuming. So your Instagram, we will make sure that your Instagram is an actual link, because it's really hard to be able to spell it out, because it's not necessarily an easy spelling of your company name. So we'll put it on the bottom of our podcast information so that everybody can see where to find you. With your garden, what are you hoping to get out of it this year? Like, So you got silver last year. Obviously, it'd be good to get an award again this year. But if you don't, it doesn't. Yeah. Is there like a thing that people can vote for? Is there a?
Yeah, there's the public choice or the gardener's choice, which I think they run. And there's the awards breakfast, which happens before it's open to the public. So I think that's 7 a.m. on the Wednesday morning. Yeah. So the judges come through and judge, I think, at 4:30 on the Tuesday night. So it's tools down. 4 o'clock, something like that on the Tuesday. And we all get kicked off site. And there's some pretty strict criteria that come through that they judge. So, of course, we're, all looking at bettering last year. I feel a completely different sense of pressure and understanding also about what it means to do this. So it's different to last year.
Because you're up against some pretty big
and
big names in the industry.
We are very much so this year. The company I used to work for 14 years is constructing.
Okay.
There's Philip Willers and Fiona Brockhoff, which are both amazing landscape designers, as well as some international designers that are back this year. So, I'm excited to see what everyone's got to do. I think also, getting our name out is why we're doing it as well. It's a great place to develop networks and industry connects, and it's such a fun thing to do. It's a bit of an adrenaline rush. I'm not going to lie, I do love it. There is talk of 2025, but I'm not sure whether
Let's just get through this one first.
My parents will kill me because they take on. I think how they say it takes a village to raise a family. It takes a village to raise a small business, let alone a small business with a single parent and a whole lot of other things that are happening. So I think.
Is your dad making anything for
not this year? No. Well. He potentially, we haven't quite told him yet. He loves being involved. My parents are amazing. They help out with the business so much. But he will be driving the truck and picking up plants, and we've got plants coming from Tassie that are going to go to Sylvan that need to be picked up, and
But he made a beautiful table last year.
He made a beautiful table. We haven't got him. Roped into that one. Not on the tools this time, but there may be a couple of things. He's got a background in building and antique restoration, so he's very handy.
Excellent. So people who are listening, please go and see Nadia's garden at the Melbourne International Flower and Garden Show, coming up in a couple of weeks, actually, isn't it? It's not very far away now.
Not at all.
Thank you so much for coming in and talking to us today. We really appreciate it.
I was chuffed to be invited, so thank you.
We're really pleased to have you. So everyone have a visit to the Melbourne International Flower and Garden Show. It's a lot of fun. Shane and I went and saw Nadia's garden last year. It's actually a really beautiful thing to do. You can go.
Night is really good.
It's so special.
Until 9 o'clock on the Friday, and there's Prosecco vans, and it's a
it
it's
was
a really
great
good
food
to
and drink,
see
and
it all lit up too.
It's really, really pretty way to see the Carlton Gardens if you haven't been there for a while. Thanks so much, Nadia.
You.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.